Bonjour, and welcome to Cafe with Grace. Nancy Flaherty, founder of Hidden Gems with Grace, has discovered the secrets to shopping in new places like a local, and she's ready to share them with you. She's explored side streets and back rooms to discover the perfect boutique, offering you that item that you will always treasure, your very own hidden gem. She's at the table, eager to tell you about her latest treasure. So grab a cup of coffee or a glass of champagne, and let's hear what she has to say.
Hey, welcome, listeners. On this week's podcast, I had the great pleasure of talking with a wonderful, wonderful friend of mine and mentor and just all around amazing businesswoman, Maggie Jackson, from her company, Maggie Knits. Maggie Knits is a knitting and yarn company, and Maggie's background happens to be in fashion and couture fashion in the knitwear industry. So when I was putting together a list of people that I wanted to interview, Maggie was right up there at the top of the list. Well, Maggie, being from Ireland, from Northern Ireland specifically, is quite a talker. And I hope you'll understand we've separated our discussion into 2 episodes. So listen in here to part 1 of my conversation, Cafe with Grace, with Maggie Jackson.
Hi, this is Nancy from Hidden Gems with Grace. Welcome to Cafe with Grace. And I have my very special guest today, Miss Maggie Jackson, all the way from Northern Ireland. Good morning, Maggie.
Good morning to you too.
Actually, it's afternoon where you are, right?
Well, that's it. And we're only, like, the time difference is your clocks changed last weekend. Ours don't change for another 2 weeks, which is daft.
Yeah.
You know, why do they not change at the one time? I don't know.
Because there's no
somebody higher than us makes these decisions.
Exactly. I just go with the flow. I don't care.
Well, I just do what I'm told.
Yeah, that's it. I do what I'm told. I go with the flow. We've known each other since 2011.
I honestly thought it was like 2014.
Yeah.
I didn't honestly think it was back as far as 2011. That's 10 years.
That's 10 years. Happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary, dears. You know?
No, we met.
Have a party.
Let's have a party. I got my cocktail right here.
Oh.
No, we met at Vogue Knitting in January of 2011. And I love everything about Ireland. I love everything about traditional Irish knit sweaters. So when I was walking by your booth in New York City, Vogue Knitting, my head whipped around so fast. And I thought, oh my God, here's a new way to take those Irish stitches and that beautiful Irish wool that I love and create something new. And so I walked into your booth and I believe I started talking to Susan, I think it was.
Yeah,
and
probably, yes. That was the very first Vogue Knitting, I think, wasn't it?
Okay.
I think that was the very first Vogue Knitting, yeah.
Okay. Well, I started talking to Susan and she said, "You're so funny. You should come on our trip to Ireland with us." And I was like, and at the time, you know, I was raising 2 daughters. I was a stay-at-home mom, but my husband had gone on tons of golfing trips. And I thought to myself, well, heck, you know, if he can go on all these golfing trips, I can go on a knitting trip. And I called him immediately right from the booth and said, "Honey, I want to sign up for this trip." And that was it. That's the end of it.
And the rest is history.
The rest
there
is
we go.
history.
And I've been trying to get rid of you for 10 years.
I told you I'm going to fangirl out.
Modern technology keeps us together.
It does. Oh man, that was the greatest trip. That was September of 2011, and you showed me the side of Northern Ireland that I had never seen before. I'd been to Republic of Ireland several times, 2 or 3 times, but I've never been to Northern Ireland before that trip. And you took us, tell me about the trip. You took us all over to places.
Well, the Maggie's Ireland trip is looking at it from a different eye, because going back really in America, all people saw were the Troubles. And that's all you could see from Northern Ireland. And thank goodness then, after 35 years, when the Troubles ended, it became open to tourists who were, American tourists who were afraid to go to the north. But it's also like, there's lots of tour companies who do the trips, but it's my Northern Ireland, and I can get indoors that others don't. And it's a knitting retreat, even though husbands come on it as well too. But it's really, there's so much history here that even in 10 days, you never see everything. So it's just taken a bit of, different sections and a bit of history of different sections of Northern Ireland, and, putting it into the trip. And it's also that, you learn the Irish linen history. You're working with the Irish linen out of my stash, which is a piece of Irish heritage, because it's not produced anymore. You get the history of the Troubles, you get the history of the Titanic even, and where we, I don't think the Titanic Museum was open whenever you came that time.
It wasn't.
And the fabulous new Titanic Museum, which is the best in the world. And then where food is also important, and where Stevie, who's the chef in Maggie's Ireland book, and he cooks the last course, the upper class had in the Titanic before it sank, 7-course meal, so just privately for everyone on the trip. And then, you've got the trip to the Aran Islands and the history of the Aran sweater. And so it's, I only take 20, 21 people, because I like it to be personable. I don't like big groups and things, and you get to, because it's nice to get to know everybody on the trip, and for people to mingle and things like that too. And it's been very, very successful, apart now from COVID. Okay, we've had to cancel, but and people have even come back a second time on it, the same as the castle retreats as well. So that's, I love that. I love that. And like you have made some great friends over the years from it.
Yes, exactly. And that's what I loved about the trip, was I learned the stories behind the places that you took us to, and standing on the walls or the gates of Londonderry.
Yes, the walls.
And talking about the Troubles, and you got choked up, and it was just, your personal history was so meaningful to me to see that.
I think, that really, at the beginning, doing the trips, when you've lived here and being brought up in the Troubles, you just went on about your everyday job. That's all you could do. And I was a fashion student at the Art College in Belfast, and that was in the 70s, when the Troubles were really at their heights, and there was bombs and things going off, and you're always out in bomb scares, and it was a very, very scary time. Although again, when you're young, your late teens, early 20s, you don't think anything, you just go on, you're infallible, you can live through it all. But looking back on it and listening then to the tour and the history of it, I just had to walk away, and I just felt tears in my eyes, and I thought, how did we live through this for 35 years? And even, I understood when I had children of my own, that my mum and dad used to worry always whenever I was there. You worry at who you going with, where you going to be, and then maybe you go there and the dance was no good, so you would go to another dance. And then, somebody would have been shot at that dance, and I would come home and they would be walking up and down. And it was really only whenever I had children of my own, because the Troubles were still on there, that I was worried about them going out and where they were, because sometimes just the wrong place, the wrong time, mistaken identity. People don't really realize what it was like, so.
Right. Well, you touched a little bit on your schooling and your history. And one of the things that I love about you is you have that fashion designer. You tell me a little bit about your school and the things, your background in the fashion industry.
Well, I started actually designing at 12. And, I was a farmer's daughter, brought up out in the country, actually not far, 5 minutes from where I live now. And, the thoughts of being a fashion designer was beyond your widest comprehension or dreams that you could be. And I used to make dolls' clothes whenever I was younger. My mum taught me to knit when I was 6 years old, and I dropped more stitches. I don't think she ever in a million years thought I would become an international award-winning designer. In fact, she said about me knitting a lot of years later, Margaret, you're still doing holes. I said, but it's part of the design. And, and then I got into sewing, and it was an old Singer treadle sewing machine, and I started designing really at 12, and still not knowing that I would go on to be a fashion designer. I liked teaching in a way, because I taught at Sunday school and things, and so I earned children's church. So my parents thought teaching was a good, safe, secure job. Who would want to go to art college and be a fashion designer? Art college is all drug addicts and hippies, You'll never make a career out of that. I can still hear my father to this day. And but I was determined. I went for the interview for teaching, and all of a sudden I was sitting waiting on the interview, and I thought, I don't want to do this. So I went up and I said, I'm sorry, I feel sick, and I went home. Well, I thought I was going to get killed, hung, drawn, and quartered when I got home, not even waiting for the interview. And so I decided I wanted to go to art college. But at art college, your first year, you covered a diversity of things, and it was jewelry, interior design, textiles, printing, weaving, fashion designing. There was jewelry, there was something different you covered in your first year. And then you took your specialist subject, and then you did 3 years specializing in that. But whatever happened, my application went haywire. And so I got, everybody else had been for their interviews that I knew, but me. And I thought, and they were keeping me going, Maggie, they know how much you talk. They're avoiding taking me. So eventually, anyway, then I did get a phone call. I went to the wrong place, and I got called for an interview. But they called me to the art college, and I went, and I had a suitcase of clothes that I had made. I had my outfit all that I had made. This, I'll never forget, like in a grey tweedy top and skirt, and there was green fleck, and I had a green sweater to go with it. And off I clattered away with my high heels and the suitcase of clothes. And Mrs. Clegg, who was head of fashion then, and they looked through everything, and they said, this girl knows what she wants to do. She wants to do fashion. And Mrs. Clegg said that the standard was good enough that I had in the designs that I had to take the first year off me and take me in as a direct entrant.
Wow.
So so my friends, they were all laughing. He said, they know how much you talk. What do you mean you got a year took off you? What do you mean? So, but for me, it was, I was used, there was no fancy yarns here, no fancy fabrics in Northern Ireland. You had no fancy fashion magazines, no fashion on TV and things like what it is now. You couldn't Google the trends and things. So to me, nearly, I thought going to fashion department was nearly like a further dressmaking class. I didn't realize I was being trained as a couturier designer with fabrics at over, maybe £100 a meter. And this was going back in the mid 70s. So that was a lot of money then. And all these fantastic yarns from Paris and from Italy. And it just was mind-boggling. And I was very young then too, compared to the others. Most of them had done the first year, the foundation year. And but it was eye-opening and very exciting. The other excitement was too, it was leaving the farm and moving into digs away from home. What time you coming in that, who you going with? Oh my goodness, party time, typical student. But as I say, I learned so much there. And I learned really to, as a couture designer, the drape and hang of fabrics. I did a little knitting, but not as much as I did really into the third year. And I learned about the drape and hang of fabrics and fitting different sizes. And because not everybody is a slim model size, you're dealing with tall people, small people. And in that design too, you did lingerie, you did bridal, you did tailoring, you know, worked with leather. You covered such a variety of things. And, you know, so it was good. But now it was a lot of hard work. And with the troubles too, you know, I remember we were out on a bomb scare, and my friend Norm and I were doing silk dresses at the time. We were at the sewing machines at the back of the room, and it was all glass around the art college, and we were out in a bomb scare. We were going, I want to get this dress finished for tomorrow, you know, blah blah blah. And here we go again, another bomb scare. But we literally were just outside the door when, and we said, Norm and I actually were looking out through the window and saw this horrible coloured green car being parked outside, and they left it, and then you couldn't leave a car unattended.
Oh, right.
And we thought it's strange, but that was the car that was the bomb.
Oh.
And so we were out, and we were literally sitting on the wall around the art college, and the bomb went off, and literally it was like a hand on your back and just blew us into the street. And when we went back in again the next morning, the glass was over and our silk dresses were cut from the glass.
Wow.
But like lucky we were safe, you know, so it was tough times, you know, it was tough times. But anyways, to say, then in my third year, I got on to knitting more, and bit of knitting on the machine, which I thought, oh, you couldn't do knitting on the machine like what you can do by hand.
Right.
And so that was an eye-opener. But I decided then to do a postgraduate course specialising in fashion knitwear, which nobody had done. They created a special course for me.
Wow, that's good.
People did knitting or designed swatches that were maybe sent to Missoni or Armani or whatever, and it was like swatches, maybe 4 to 6 inches squares of these different stitches that then they mass produced as lengths of knitting.
Okay.
And so for me then doing it as fashion knitting was something that was very different, and I learned to work on the industrial machine, and I learned so much that year. And that was really, that third and fourth year were the years that I started to win competitions internationally. And the biggest one was the Knitmaster one, which was with Vogue, not Vogue Knitting, but Vogue, and winning that, and international Moa. There's umpteen different ones. But at the end of that year, for somebody who was a late starter, I got the highest awards ever received in the history of the art college, which was exciting. So I think my father at the end thought, you know, maybe it's not, she didn't do too bad, you know. So, but even whenever I left, you know, like I got on television then and was in all the newspapers, and I think it was like Local Girl Made Good, and it was a bit of good news, these fashion things, as opposed to usual troubles. Right. And so I had a lot of support and following, and it's, you know, and I was flown to London for the Knitmaster competition, won the latest one for myself and the latest one for the art college, which they were worth about £500 or something each thing, which was a big thing. But even going to London with, you know, in Vogue there in the fashion show, and it was like you had models of the status, Naomi Campbell, who were modelling then. You know, coming from the country here, we farmers' daughters, like, wow, you know, wow. And I remember huge big ivory tusks at the top of the catwalk that the models came through. But there was the Royal College, St. Martin's and everything there. And unfortunately at that time, the English hated the Irish. The Irish hated the English. Right. So they actually took it as an insult that somebody from Northern Ireland actually beat their top students. Oh. And me being my usual friendly self, and I was, hi, and I love your outfit, and they didn't talk to me at all. They literally just looked me up and down, and I had thought when I left art college, I'll go and work for a big designer in London and to learn a lot and then see where I go from there. And it made me so determined because I thought I will never work with you here. And I came back with determination. I was going to set up a business in Northern Ireland, and because they were, oh, how can there be fashion out of Northern Ireland? You're all killing yourselves. And you know what, it was crazy. And like then the Earl of Lichfield, he was the Queen's cousin, he you got a photograph with him as he photographed your garment and things all too. So what it was, that was the changing time in me. And I suppose as mommy says, you always have this inner determination and drive, you know. But like you, Nancy.
Well, and that's what makes you such a special entrepreneur and someone to look up to in my position. You have a drive and a determination to make a huge success of your business, and you've done so. Just, I mean, how many different pivots have you made in your career? Just to talk about starting out as a fashion designer and then the other different changes of direction that you've made. It's remarkable to see how successful you've been. And I know firsthand what fantastic pieces you've created. So tell me a little, you mentioned one time that you knitted a dress for Miss Ireland, Miss Universe.
Yes, Miss Ireland, for going to Miss World. I did that for 5 years. And in the second year, they had a fashion team who judged the evening dress, and there was an award for that. And the I can't even remember her name. When she went, they told her, "Oh, you can't wear a knitted dress. It's not counted as evening." And she said, "I'm sorry, I'm wearing this dress." These were the ones who organised the Miss World. Jerry Springer was the compere that year, and it was in, I can't remember, it was China, Japan. And she says, "No, I'm wearing this dress. Maggie made this dress for me." So she said, and she stuck to it and she wore it. And it ended up that, well, there were 100 dresses, and they just announced the winner on the TV, because her parents hired a hall and had the big screen TV and invited everybody to go to watch her doing this. Also, it was quite exciting. And I went, and I didn't really think anything of it, and just thought it was just the evening dress. And I was busy thinking, gosh, I've all these other garments to get done the rest of the week. As any fashion designer would tell you, you're constantly working morning, noon and night. And so I remember going to this here, and they announced the winner, but then she rang her mum and dad, and she said, "My dress got second with the fashion judges." So I was like, oh my God, wow. And then I got really excited, so it was like, okay, calm yourself down here, calm yourself down. So when she came back to Northern Ireland, they filmed her coming down the steps of the plane, and it was on TV and things. So it was exciting, and knitting can be sexy compared to what other people might think, but too, they're good looking, so you can put a plastic bag over them, they still look good. They're tall, slim, and and I hate too if they're fabulous looking, they're tall, slim, and I hate if they've got very nice personalities as well.
Right. Oh my God.
They've got everything going for them. So that was exciting. So I did that for 5 years, and that was exciting to do. But I think in business you have to be adaptable. The fashion world has changed so much. Like, to me, going back all those years ago in training, and I remember going to Paris and going to the house of Madame Grey, Couturier house, and as students, like, we had to dress when we were put in the corner. And Farrah Fawcett and Ryan O'Neill came into the fashion show. Well, we near died. Us from wee Belfast, me from wee Mullicarton Road here, Oh my God, it was like but like, the blouses started 2,000, the dresses started at like 5,000. This is in the 70s,
Right.
So it was like crazy. It really was couturier. And then to look over the years now, where the likes of Missoni and ones have designed for Target.
Right.
That would never have been in those days. Or, if you went around the big shows and things, you couldn't take photographs, or you didn't really have mobile phones then, or even if you had a camera, barely allowed on the booth. it was such a change that there's been in that industry, really, because they've had to change or to survive.
Right.
Or on was it PBS? Who would see, the big designers on the PBS selling off designs? You'd never have seen that going back in those days.
No.
And so people's lifestyle have changed. Things are more casual. And yes, there is still the high end, and then going down to ready to wear, which I'm sure you see in Paris and things, and the cost of things. But it has changed so much, and they've had to adapt and change to survive. And that's what I think any business, like in 44 years of business now, for me, I look back, I had to make the changes, and it's a roller coaster.
Right. So when you were in fashion design, you sold through Neiman Marcus, you told me, Saks Fifth Avenue. And
yes, I sold to Neiman Marcus and Nordstrom and other international boutiques, like Japan, all over the place. But when I did the New York Pret-a-Porter, which that was only the second one, and now I think then it went more lower end, but it was designer orientated then, and I was in we were lucky we got grants and things to do those shows because it was so expensive. I was the only one from Northern Ireland, but it was with the British contingency and the knitwear section, and on the booth next to me was Valentino.
Wow!
I nearly passed out. But the booth had 900 booths. The booth had like maybe baby grand piano with a pianist on it. They had, the likes of Naomi Campbell, Stella Tennant, the big models, all on their booth. It was just amazing. And I remember that was my first time in America, so that's about 36 years ago. And I remember they had a special party at Studio 54 for all the designers, all the exhibitors, and the American designers put on a fashion show. And I can tell you the first bit of that fashion show, there was an airplane on stage and the models came walking off the plane, and that turned round. Then there was models came down from ropes on the ceiling. It was like, my fashion shows in Northern Ireland were borrow the catwalk from the church, borrow bits of carpet nailed together on the thing. There was no professional models whenever I started. You had some of the girls who were my friends, so you had to get them a few gins to get them down the catwalk. There was no even fake spray tanning. And here was this fashion show, and the catwalk was covered in like black plastic. So it was really shiny, and but all these models things, and then I'll never forget it. One of these, one of the, so was it I'm the King of the Jungle, and first of all there was these wee models the models came out and they had like long nails and they were like wee animals scurrying on the thing. Well, then this model came out with the red hair frizzed out about 4 foot. And tall, skinny, probably about 7 foot near tall, and like a snake skin all in one suit on her. Well, she was walking down, cracking the whip. I'm the king of the jungle, and that's why the animals were all, or the other models were like animals scurrying all over the place. I came home and I thought, I am so country yokel, this is like, right, okay, forget about the stage from the local church. And my mother we used to have a break in the fashion show, and I used to do about 90 garments, from everything from a wedding dress down to knitted suits or dinos, or just everything but the kitchen sink. And we would have a break in the middle, and my mother would do like about 20 loaves of sandwiches and about 1,000 pastries. God help her. Plus, in the interval, I said, okay, can you finish knitting that band? And then I would staple it to the mohair cardigan because you couldn't see it on the stage.
Get it down the runway.
Dealing with private, and that was, dealing with private clients all then. But, the shows are not like that now. Okay, yes, they do have the big shows, but you won't get an airplane, or you wouldn't go to a big fashion show with the baby grand piano like that.
Oh, wow.
Changed my outlook on things totally.
Yeah.
totally. And then I had a rep in London, and that was how I got the orders for Neiman Marcus and Nordstrom. And they used to order like 90 maybe sweaters at a time. But, then I'd maybe up to 45 out knitters and things. And then you would have somebody who sewed them together, because coming from the fashion world, I was particular how they were sewn together and finished. But it used to be a nightmare because they all had to be, you had a certain delivery day.
Mm-hmm.
And if they were a day late on some of those places, they would send them back.
Wow.
And one of the things I learned why that happened was, and whenever you're doing hand knits, I used to allow my knitters 2 weeks to finish something. If it was going to, some of them would finish in less. If it was going to take them longer, let me know, and then I would pass it to somebody else to finish. Because Granny falls down the stairs, kids take sick, husband runs off with the secretary, so the knitting isn't the most important thing there. So, but and that's all they did was they knit for me. And so, then you would get these pieces in, some of it would be sewn together, then you had to put buttons on it. And it was a nightmare getting 90 out in one go. But that's also where I learnt all my tips in knitting and with knitters from what I do now, because very few designers would knit 90 of the same garment.
Right.
And with maybe 40 different knitters, and the way they would knit, you're not a machine, so it does not come back exactly the same.
Right.
And what I found was I was able to do an entrepreneur course in Boston. I was lucky to be picked. There was 20 picked out of 500, and I was in placement in Neiman Marcus in Boston. And what I learned there, why you needed to get the things there on a date, the sales staff were on commission only. They also rented the section that they were selling in. And so they would clear the rack for the Maggie knits to come in on Tuesday. Well, Maggie knits doesn't arrive on Tuesday, so they have an empty rack that they have nothing to sell on, and it doesn't look right in the designer section. So therefore your name wouldn't be good. And then maybe after 2 days, if your things aren't, they're going to put other garments and your things are being sent back to you. So that was why I learned it was important to get it to them on time, in the likes of those stores. I would think a lot of the stores like Saks, I would say a lot of them all work. I don't know if that's the same today, like that was 30 odd years ago. Too. So,
they've changed so much since then. I don't know exactly how it all works, but
yeah.
That's amazing. That's so stressful.
Well, yes, it is. It was a nightmare. I had all my friends and sewing buttons on, whatever. And my mother used to say, because I used to have them coming down my stairs, needs buttons, needs a label, needs this, needs pressed, whatever. Molly says, Margaret, why don't you just finish it completely and then put it to the side and it's completely done? And I still hear that in my head whenever several things that I'm trying to get finished before a show, new designs, and I think, right, okay, just finish it completely and then it's done. It's off your list. Go to the next one, finish completely, and then put it. It's not like a lot of American knitters are maybe working on 4 or 5 projects together. No, I have to finish one, or they never finish it. Some of them have more than 4 or 5 projects on needles and never finish it, So I learned, I'm not looking at anybody in particular because I can't see you. But
don't look at me. This is a podcast.
Thanks for joining me on Cafe with Grace with my very special guest, Maggie Jackson. This is the end of episode 1. Stay tuned. Next week, we'll continue our conversation with episode 2. Maggie and I had such fun talking and catching up that it ended up being 2 podcast episodes instead of just 1. So stay tuned next week to hear the rest of the story.
Thank you for joining us at the Cafe with Grace. If you want to know more about finding hidden gems, go to hiddengemswithgrace.com and subscribe to our newsletter, or join us on our next trip as we explore more hidden gems with Grace.